Well, thank you for taking time out of the heat wave to chat with me. I mean, I guess it could be worse. We could be in this heat on the 2,000 feet in the air.
This is true. I I have personally experienced worse, I can tell you, with the filming of this film. It was very much we actually had like a record breaking heat out there. It's near Death Valley, and we had a record broken where not with us on the mountain, but down the desert side, not far away. It broke like through 150 Fahrenheit. So it was like like a world record or something when we were doing it, and it was horrific on that. At times it was so hot, it was miserable. So
yeah, it does not sound. I guess we can all sort of place ourselves in that position at the moment. But I mean, ahead of the release on September the 9th, Fall will be closing this year's FrightFest. How are you feeling about that screening?
I'm very excited, actually. I'm very excited, and I was I think it's a great place to have it, and and it's kind of nice that a friend of mine, Neil Marshall, is opening with his film, and it's nice to be closing with this one. So it's he's been a kind of influence and friend over the years, and it's nice that is kind of a nice northern sandwich, as I called it, with him of our movies.
I mean, this film, I think more than most, it absolutely has to be seen on the biggest screen possible. I mean, even sort of like, my home setup where I saw it was enough to have, like, particularly my husband was like sweaty palms and anxiety. And now it's going to be going into the IMAX. What do you think that experience is going to be like, seeing those heights?
I'd be honest, IMAX is the way to experience it. Like, we shot the film on IMAX, on a digital format for IMAX, a large format, and it was kind of designed for that experience, to get the best experience. And I really think that's the very best way to watch the movie. So I'm really excited to see it that way, and see it, with a nice, nice big audience and a nice big screen is exactly the way it was intended. It's very exciting. It's like you shoot it differently as well for the format. I'll say that. Like, we actually did a thing where, like, looking at like, if you look at movies and look at, like, when you're shooting things for, say, television or different formats that it's going to go out on eventually, even on set you're making different choices, and I think with this one we actually did something with when we were shooting it, to try to make sure that we were looking at it through the right perspective. We often use these like the Oculus VR goggles, rather than viewing it on like a little monitor, like you normally would on a director's chair. We're able to use the VR goggles and project it onto essentially a digital IMAX screen in a theater, so we could watch the film as it was being shot in a way that you would experience it at the theater. And that changed how we shot it, and it often made us push wider, because when you're kind of seeing it on a big screen, your focus is different, and your peripheral vision and experience are different. So we did that right on the shooting side of it and the design side. So really seeing it the way that it was genuinely intended is the very best way to experience this film, for sure.
I mean, do you have any words of advice, for those that are venturing to the cinemas to see this film? I remember, like, before Neil Marshall's The Descent, I remember seeing, like, Philip Schofield saying, it's not for, people with, like, heart conditions or things like that, Did you have a similar sort of set of warnings for Fall?
I really hope so. I would like to have the same set of warnings. No, I think obviously it plays on, it plays on the fear of heights, and I think I have seen it does seem to give a very visceral reaction, and a very I think it's an experience for sure. It's kind of, it should probably hold a roller coaster warning, right? Those with any heart conditions or whatnot might want to approach it cautiously, because it really it pushes those buttons, I think, and but that's the joy of it, right? That's why we got the movies ultimately. So I think as much as it's terrifying, it's a ride, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's been more sort of in the last couple of decades, but these films all set in one location, one situation, sort of the survival or horror survival films, which Fall would fit into.
Yeah.
Why do you think they have become so popular?
I think, well, I think there's a couple of reasons. I think one is that I think the simplicity of life and death and survival is very grounded in kind of all of us, and it's very universal. And I think that simplicity is quite appealing, and I think that I think the reason something like for me, having kind of a strong concept is really important at the heart. If you want to take, basically, I think you have to earn the reason for people to go to the theatre nowadays. Do you know what I mean? There has to be a really good reason behind it, and you have to kind of look at like what really plays best. And yeah, I think for me, having a simple concept that's able to that can quickly get into the kind of the raw, grounded emotional feelings that you want to experience is a really good go-to. And I think survival, kind of survival setups or unique setups are very easy to identify with and put yourself in that situation, really, of like the nightmare situation that the girls, Becky and Hunter, find themselves in. It's kind of easy to imagine in the sense of because it's a real situation and a very unique one. And I think, and so I think it's almost easier to put yourself in those shoes when it's something that we're familiar with and we can kind of easily identify with. And so for me, like, I think doing something, if it was a film about heights and you set it in space, it's less easy to identify with. And I think, yeah, always going back on the simplicity of it. It's also intriguing, I think, as a filmmaker, but also from an audience perspective, is to say, okay, here's this really simple situation, and what can you do with it? And that kind of lets you explore things, I think, in maybe a greater detail than you might another situation. Like I think a lot in films, especially when it comes to kind of genre, it can get noisy, and the noise can actually obfuscate and kind of spoil what is kind of pure and raw about a situation. So I think simplicity really lets you focus on the experience and the dilemma that they're in, and really kind of think about it, like, what would I do next and how would you go about it? And I really like that idea that you kind of try and think your way out of it, and you say, okay, well, if that was me, what would I do? And that was one of the joys of the movie. And I think what Jonathan and I tried to do is to kind of really put ourselves through it, and have it so it try and kind of temper the reaction of the audience and the kind of and try and just be slightly in front of that each time, so you're not kind of groaning and going, no, why didn't you do that? It's kind of it's actually a hard kind of balance to get right, and I think we're very conscious of that too. So I think, but being unique, honestly, like I like everyone else, I'm desperate for originality in movies, right? And we've kind of got to this place where only kind of big tentpole IP kind of seems to be the place where people can play. But I think what this film does is it in a way, kind of going back to that simplicity that you talk of, like, it allows us to do essentially a very big idea, and do it kind of in a big way, as opposed to kind of being too kind of diluted, and to you can't really, like, outside of tentpole, it's very hard to have spectacle beyond kind of a limited capacity. And I think that this kind of rolls all that into one interesting kind of place.
I think what I really like is, a lot of these times, the way that the characters end up in these situations it's like, well, why would you do that? Blah, blah, blah. But I think with Fall, there is a purpose to Hunter and Becky. They're not just, I don't know, it's like drunk sorority girls or something that are like, oh, why don't we do this? They are trained, Hunter by profession is, like a daredevil influencer. Was it important that, you did have that sort of believability and validity to why they might end up in this scenario?
Yeah. I think you, Yeah, as much as possible that was the case, right? Because it is kind of an absurd scenario, setting it up on it sort of like being trapped at 2,000 feet. It's like, how do you get the characters there in a way that we're behind and we're with, and we understand it and kind of climb it with them? Because it's not, I guess it's not just the being trapped. Like I think we were very aware that the notion of climbing and going top is an experience in itself, and it has and so you want to be with the characters through all of that and understand deeply like why why they've said about it, and so yeah, so it was really important to try and get that balance right, so again, they're not going into it and you're not kind of screaming at them like annoyed at the characters. You want to be with them and understand why. And I think there's a real at the heart of the movie, I guess I wanted to try and do two things with it. One was the experience of the concept situation and the heights and the horror of heights, and play into that sandbox. But the other was to try and have to tell a real story about a real character story that's kind of baked around, and that it's the kind of center of the movie is based on something quite pure. And I think it and the exploration of that, of a loss and someone kind of suffering that and what that means was kind of, it gives it more grounding, I think, to kind of be behind the characters as they go on that journey. So yeah, so it was really important. I think if that doesn't, my observation at least is that the things that work, films that work, you do have to be with the characters, fully invested in with the characters, right? And you have to access their vulnerabilities. You have to empathize and understand them and understand why they're there. And I think I think really for a film to fully function, you really need to be, need to get that bit right. So there was a lot of focus. Arguably, it was the hardest thing to write about the film. Like, I think the situation when we wrote it, was almost played out in a way, the situation and how it kind of, from the climb up to everything else, like we mapped it out. We actually kind of had like a cardboard cutout of the tower. Based on a real tower, we kind of got the geography right, and then myself and the writer essentially like blocked out and kind of really tried to kind of think through what could we possibly do to get out of the situation. And that's kind of was easier because it was almost just it's very easy to kind of just work through that stuff. It's quite natural. But yeah, I think that the tougher challenge was definitely in finding the characters and finding how they balanced and worked together, and the kind of tone of their attitude and where they were in life, and try and place that in the right way. Because yeah, it would have been very easy to kind of, or very foolish to kind of open the movie with them climbing the tower on page one, right? That's the kind of, it's like studio note, but it's a foolish studio note because I think in movies I've observed that everyone forgets the first act, right? Like when you've watched a movie, the first act of a movie, when you're setting up the characters, we often don't remember it as it was because it's the first time experiencing it and it's a bit different. And certainly like conversations over the years that I've had with studios and whatnot, there tends to be this forgotten how important that first act is, really, is it's so vital. And I think it all comes down to being with people on an adventure that you empathize with and you want to be on an adventure with or a journey with. And so yeah, so it's vital to get that right, really.
And I mean, how high were your cast when you were filming? How?
I was going to say how high. They had loads of weed. And they were not that way. They were okay. So it's funny. We actually, so the way, again, like grounding, I think is an important one, and capturing reality, right, is been a part of this. And so the way we went about shooting it was finding a way to shoot it at 2,000 feet, basically, and like how can we do that and really capture it, because it's not just about the actors being in that situation, it's about the cameraman, it's about the crew, because I find that like the energy that is on set, it's usually kind of generated through performance and then kind of captured through everyone else. it's all very there's all these subconscious cues that tell you it's real when it's real. And I've noticed it a lot with like stunt work in the past. When you do a real stunt, you kind of capture these kind of nuances that are very unique and very human in a way. And and so I was very conscious to try and find to create a situation where they could really be there at 2,000 feet. And the challenge with that is it's not so much getting the actors to 2,000 feet, because we went and looked at real towers, and it's based on a real tower, the 2,000-foot tower. But it's getting the crew and everyone else to the height to film them, and the practicalities of shooting in and around it. So in the end, what we came about was finding basically the top of a mountain with kind of a quite sheer drop off that was at 2,000 feet. So we kind of went up there and built the top of the tower in different sections of the tower. So we had, say, 100-foot tower at the top of a mountain. And then so we were able to kind of sling technocranes and things to get to the height to film it, and actually have them at height. And then all but kind of looking straight down is real. So you kind of capture it all, and you get all the kind of weather elements and everything else kind of playing. And it was really that enabled us to kind of shoot the movie in essentially like one place in, you know, contained way, and really put the girl, put Grace and Ginny in a situation where they were able to really experience it, you know. And it's I think that was important.
Yeah, they're braver than me. I guess they're both angling for Tom Cruise's job.
They were, honestly. Like, the amount of stuff they did is unbelievable. Like they like, that's what's like, if you look at the movie, like when you see them hang off there, it's really them, right? And it's like, and it is terrifying. Like the first time we went up, because you've got this structure that is just basically straight up in the air, right? And it was obviously like engineered with stunt trusses and things in the center of it to keep it safe, right? But really, you've got this big metal structure just kind of wobbling around and like blowing about. And it is pretty terrifying. The first time we went up, I went up ahead of Grace and Ginny. That's a kind of before we shot, just to, you know, figuring if any of us were going to die, it'd best be me. So we went up there, and I remember it was actually hard. I'd say one thing, it's hard to get from the ladder to the ledge and then up and over because it sticks out. So we all struggled on this little like piece of it. And it was pretty terrifying, although we had like a safety wire. So if we fell, we would have kind of come to a snag stop, but it's still terrifying because you feel like you're at that height because you're just looking out, you're 2,000 feet up. So I remember we climbed up there, and Grace came up behind me, and she like burst out of tears when she got to the top, because it was almost like such a relief that she'd built up to this moment of doing it, that it was like a big release for her. And I remember it was kind of quite emotional. And then, you know, we got into that, and then Grace and Ginny, they got very kind of comfortable, I guess, with the height, and the riggers that did the safety. They were actually the same guys who did the Tom Cruise tower sequence, you know, the Dubai sequence. Yeah. So we had really good riggers out of LA who made Ginny and Grace feel very safe. And our stunt coordinator Ingrid Klein was excellent, and so I think with that reassurance, they were able to go ahead and do a bunch of things that were with the girls really doing it, and we're able to shoot it in a way where we can look right at them, look over them, look down, and it all being kind of captured for real. And I think without them being so kind of up for it and into it, it wouldn't be the movie it is really without that.
I mean, hats off to them. I mean, I got wobbly on the cable cars in Matlock, so yeah. Hats off, my hats off to them. And I guess so my final question, you've obviously fall is about to be unleashed on audiences around the world. I think you're sort of sticking with the high concept thing from what your title on IMDb, #tsunami. Is there anything that you can share about that?
Oh yeah, well actually I'm not now. I actually am not doing that movie now. So that was a movie that I have to be careful what I say on these things. But no, I was actually I did funnily enough, myself and Jonathan, who wrote this movie, we actually did a pass of that movie, and I was directing it prior to COVID, but then COVID caused all kinds of production nightmares, so it all ended up petering out. But no, I like to the point of concept. I think I genuinely think there's been such a change, like good and bad change, right, in viewing habits and what we're able to experience and what theaters are there for. And I think that I do think that we have to, it would be better for all of us if the more kind of original material that's worthwhile playing in theaters that we can enjoy, the better. So I do think that the key to that, part of the key to that, is to make it something that is worthwhile and that kind of stands out enough to experience something new, you know. So I think yeah, I'm always kind of attracted to that kind of stuff, but yeah, but I'm not sure, you know, yeah, I'm not sure what's next, truthfully. So I'm kind of yeah, I'll see what's what. I'm just recovering from the, like, even now we're doing the last hand-ins on this in terms of deliverables, so it's still going on, and it's been the, you know, the gift that keeps giving. I think I need a year off, is the truth. So, so I'll probably do that.
Good. Well, I wish you the best of luck with the screening, and I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
On that massive IMAX.
Are you going to be there? Yeah, are you going to be?
Yeah, I'm there for the duration. So
wonderful. Well, I'll see you there. I'm going to be there too. So I'll see you in person. That'd be good. We'll sweat palms together. It'd be grand.
Yes.